When people talk about movies that revolutionize visual effects, Star Wars movies are always a part of the conversation. The crazy part is that most of the film's iconic moments were created using practical filmmaking techniques, from stop motion monsters and miniature spaceships to real explosions and massive practical sets. Almost every iconic moment in the movie was physically created in front of the camera. That's why many scenes still feel more realistic than modern blockbusters today. The opening Hoth sequence in Star Wars Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back, was designed to introduce the planet as a freezing, lifeless, and dangerous world. In the scene, Luke Skywalker patrols the snowy landscape while riding a tauntaun creature across the icy terrain. From wide shots, the tauntaun wasn't a real animal at all. Industrial Light and Magic created a stop-motion miniature puppet that was animated frame by frame. Since traditional stop motion could sometimes look jerky, the filmmakers added motion blur and smoother camera movement to make the creature feel more natural. For close-up scenes, a life-size tauntaun prop and animatronic head were built with mechanically moving mouth and neck sections, so Luke's interaction scenes would feel realistic. The second major creature in the sequence was the Wampa, a giant snow monster that attacks Luke and drags him into an ice cave. The creature was mainly created using a large practical costume worn by an actor. Because the suit had limited movement, the filmmakers mostly showed the monster through shadows, claws, and quick cuts to make it appear more terrifying, while hiding the costume's limitations. The Hoth battle in Empire Strikes Back is still considered one of the most revolutionary battle sequences at the time, when modern CGI technology didn't exist, which meant every explosion, vehicle movement, laser blast, and battlefield shot had to be created using practical effects, miniatures, and old-school visual effects techniques. And honestly, that's one of the biggest reasons the battle still feels so real and believable today. To bring the frozen planet Hoth to life, the filmmakers combined real snow locations with massive indoor studio sets. The outdoor icy landscape scenes were filmed in the Finse Glacier region of Norway, where the cast and crew had to work in brutal freezing temperatures and real snowstorms. Sometimes the weather became so harsh that visibility was extremely limited, but those real conditions accidentally helped the movie, because the natural snow, wind, and icy atmosphere made Hoth feel like a genuinely hostile planet instead of a fake movie set. However, many of the close-up battle scenes and controlled action movements were filmed later inside England's Elstree studios, where huge snow-covered sets were specifically constructed. These studio sets allowed the crew to safely control explosions, lighting, and vehicle effects, while still matching the harsh outdoor footage shot in Norway. The most unforgettable part of the battle was the appearance of the giant Imperial AT-AT walkers. On screen, these massive machines feel like unstoppable metal monsters slowly marching across the battlefield. But in reality, they were not full-size vehicles at all. Instead, Industrial Light and Magic and legendary animator Phil Tippett created highly detailed miniature models in different scales. Small models were used for wide battle shots, while larger versions were built for close-up scenes where more surface detail was needed. Every walker was carefully textured with mechanical joints, weathering, and tiny details so they would look like real military machines instead of simple models. Creating the movement of the AT-AT walkers was one of the hardest parts of the entire sequence. The team used stop-motion animation where animators manually adjusted the walkers frame by frame and photographed every tiny movement. When thousands of these images were played together, the walkers appeared to move across the battlefield. The problem with traditional stop-motion was that movement could sometimes look stiff or jerky, so ILM added motion blur and advanced animation techniques to make the walkers feel heavier and more realistic. The process was painfully slow. Sometimes an entire day of work produced only a few seconds of finished footage. But that patience and attention to detail is exactly why the walkers still look impressive decades later. Another legendary moment from the battle was the rebel snowspeeders flying around the walkers and wrapping tow cables around their legs. This sequence was created by combining multiple layers of visual effects together. Snowspeeder miniatures were filmed separately on wire rigs against blue screens, while the AT-AT animation, tow cables, explosions, and snow debris were all captured independently. Later, every layer was combined using optical compositing techniques. The process was extremely difficult because if even one layer didn't perfectly match the others, the entire shot had to be recreated from scratch. To make the battle feel like a real war zone, the filmmakers also relied heavily on practical explosions and pyrotechnics. Tiny explosive charges were hidden inside miniature battlefield sets and filmed using high-speed cameras, so the explosions would appear much larger and heavier on screen. Snow blasts were created using compressed air and powdered materials, while smoke and atmospheric effects were constantly added to make the battle feel chaotic and alive. What makes the Hoth battle so legendary, even today, is the physical weight behind every shot. The walkers were real miniatures, the explosions were practical, and the snow effects were physically happening in front of the camera. Because of that, the battle still feels more grounded and believable than many modern CGI heavy action scenes. The asteroid field chase of this movie was one of the greatest space chase sequences ever filmed. In the scene, the Millennium Falcon escapes into a deadly asteroid field, while TIE fighters and giant Imperial Star Destroyers aggressively pursue it through space. Massive rocks fly past the screen at insane speeds, explosions erupt everywhere, and the entire sequence feels like a chaotic cosmic storm, completely out of control. What makes the sequence even more incredible is that none of the spacecraft were real full-size ships. Industrial Light and Magic create highly detailed miniature models of the Millennium Falcon, TIE fighters, and Star Destroyers. Every model was carefully weathered, painted, and textured, so it would look like an actual machine instead of a clean toy model. The Millennium Falcon especially received an insane amount of detailing because the camera frequently moved extremely close to it during the chase. To create the flying shots, the miniatures were mounted onto motion control rigs against blue or black backgrounds. These rigs worked alongside computer-controlled camera systems that could repeat the exact same movement multiple times with perfect precision. This allowed the filmmakers to shoot the same scene in several separate layers. One pass would capture only the Falcon, another would film asteroids, another explosions and laser blasts, while additional layers added stars and space backgrounds. All these elements were later combined through optical compositing to create the final shot. Interestingly, some of the most intense flying moments were actually created by keeping the spacecraft model still, while the camera aggressively moved around it. This simple trick created the illusion that the Falcon was speeding dangerously through space at incredible velocity. The cockpit scenes involving Han Solo and Leia were also far more practical than most people realize. The actors were not sitting inside a moving spacecraft. Instead, the full-size Millennium Falcon cockpit set was mounted onto hydraulic rigs that violently shook the entire structure during filming. Off-camera crew members flashed lights, triggered vibrations, and simulated turbulence so the actors would physically react to the chaos around them. One of the most famous behind-the-scenes facts about the sequence is that many of the asteroids were literally made from everyday household objects. ILM artists used potatoes, rocks, plaster pieces, and random textured materials to create asteroid miniatures. One of the movie's most unforgettable sections takes place on the swamp planet, Dagobah, where Luke Skywalker meets Jedi Master Yoda. Although the planet feels like a real alien world, the entire environment was actually built inside Elstree Studios. The soundstage floor was covered with real mud, water, tree roots, and plants to create the swamp atmosphere. Fog machines and dry ice smoke were constantly used to give Dagobah its mysterious and living appearance. Yoda himself became one of the greatest practical creature effects ever created. Creature designer Stuart Freeborn built the detailed puppet, while legendary puppeteer Frank Oz performed the character. Many people assume Yoda was created using CGI, but the character was actually a fully practical animatronic puppet. His eyes, ears, mouth, and fingers were mechanically and manually controlled during filming. Frank Oz operated Yoda from off-camera, while also performing the character's voice. Because Mark Hamill was acting with a real moving puppet instead of a visual effect, the scenes felt much more believable and emotional. The Cloud City lightsaber duel between Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader is still considered one of the most iconic moments in sci-fi history. Instead of feeling like a simple action fight, director Irvin Kershner wanted the duel to feel emotional and psychologically intense. The massive carbon freezing chamber was built practically inside Elstree Studios using industrial-style set designs, orange lighting, smoke, and steam effects to create a dangerous atmosphere. To prepare for the duel, Mark Hamill went through special sword fighting and movement training before filming began. The choreography was designed by professional swordsmaster Bob Anderson, who also performed as Darth Vader's stunt double during many fight scenes. Hamill practiced fencing-style footwork, timing, and lightsaber swings repeatedly, so the combat would feel cinematic but believable. Since the duel involved narrow platforms, smoke-filled environments, and moving cameras, every movement had to be carefully coordinated. At the climax of the movie, one of the most emotional moments happens when Luke Skywalker loses his intense lightsaber duel against Darth Vader and falls up hanging beneath Cloud City's massive reactor shaft. On screen, the location looks terrifyingly deep and endless, making it feel like Luke is hanging thousands of feet above certain death. But behind the scenes, the filmmakers actually built only a small practical set for the sequence. The production team constructed a simple metal platform and railing where Mark Hamill physically performed the hanging shots. The real magic came from the visual effects work created by Industrial Light and Magic. The giant circular tunnel and endless blinking lights seen in the background were created using matte paintings and optical compositing techniques. Artists painted huge futuristic tunnel artwork by hand and later combined it with Mark Hamill's real footage to create the final illusion. By layering practical footage with painted backgrounds, the filmmakers made the reactor shaft feel unbelievably massive and futuristic without using any CGI at all. More than 4 decades later, Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back is still considered one of the greatest examples of practical filmmaking ever created. If you enjoyed this behind-the-scenes breakdown, make sure to subscribe for more legendary movie behind-the-scenes secrets, practical effects stories, and iconic filmmaking moments from classic Hollywood movies.